Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Neda Maria Kaizumi, your host, and with us we have Allegra Grunberg, who is a skilled AI expert with a background in computer science, ethics, and social issues. She has worked in both research and industry and helping to build and study AI systems. Allegra cares deeply about making AI responsible and fair, and she focuses on both the technical and human side of AI. She has worked on real world problems and believes that AI should be used in ways that help people and society. In her work, she looks beyond just the technology and focuses on what really matters to people. Welcome to the show, Allegra.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Allegra, your new work looks at something called collective intelligence digital twin technology. Can you explain what that means in simple terms?
Sure, yeah. So I did the tech policy master's at University of College London, great program, and my dissertation was a medley of the free energy principle and collective intelligence. So the free energy principle was created by Carl Friston, who's also at University of College London, and what it talks about, what it stems from, is neuroscience. So, and this is seen in other systems in the natural world, which is it's all about freeing up and minimizing the surprise, the gap between your expectation and reality. So at the end of the day, in each system, when an agent, like whether it's an individual or a neuron in the brain, you are actively inferring, you're actively being a part of the system, and you're constantly trying to narrow the gap between what you assume and what is actually happening. So I brought that in, and then collective intelligence is all about the reality that when multiple people come together and there's a diversity of thought, that these groups, teams, and in general in systems work better than an individual on their own. And so I created a framework from these concepts to analyze discrepancies in the employment ecosystem. So especially in the current times, AI and other types of technology are putting people out of work. And just generally, the economy is changing, I would say, in all economies all over the world. And so this is to kind of get ahead of and to comprehend the discrepancy of like someone who's a new graduate and the existing employment sphere and what is going on, and to see what are people's experiences, not just looking at numbers of employment, etc.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I think I would like to understand how does this connect to your background in AI and ethics and social systems, because the topic is very important and exciting for itself, but how did it connect to your background?
Yeah. So initially when I was younger, I worked on Capitol Hill in Congress in America, and I also worked for the mayor's office and on Bill de Blasio's campaign. And so back then, I was really interested in trying to understand governance. I think, especially as an American, we disregard the difference between politics, policy, and governance. These are actually three different concepts that are actually in many different type of industries. And the difference is governance is about understanding how to manage a system. And so after working in government, and going through politics and dealing and looking at how policy works, I saw that there was a big discrepancy between how policy is created, the rationale for it, and how it was affecting those that it was created for, i.e. constituents, the people. And so there was constantly this discrepancy also in economics as well. So I got into system science and behavioral science because at the end of the day, I thought it was very important for people to be self-aware enough to understand their own needs in order to communicate this back out to those who were creating the systems. And then as I went on and created my own startup, the Decision Lab, which is still up and running in Canada, and then also Continue Tech, which is a predictive analytics platform for education reform, I saw that it wasn't just about people being self-aware, but it was also communicating out in a very fast loop, in a consistent manner, their experience. Because even if someone knows what they're experiencing, if the system creators or those who are in policy, politics, and in places of power are not receiving this information in a timely manner, the system is constantly breaking down or is being created for something dissimilar from the original said objective. And so that's how I got into system science and active inference and the free energy principle for my dissertation.
That was quite interesting. I was really tempted to jump into the topic of policy and governance, but we'll do that later. What got you interested in AI at all?
When did I get into it? I did data science a while ago, and initially it was all about, at the end of the day, you cannot make good decisions unless you have good data. So initially it was just about machine learning. And trying to understand and trying to pivot towards utilizing valid and good data. So, of course, ChatGPT came along, large language models came along, open source large language models came along, and these different types of modeling techniques came along. And it became even more apparent to me and interesting to me that people were involved now. All of our data was being mined. These different types of modeling techniques were all about guessing the next thing that someone had said in the past based on our data. And so this is very exciting and very imperative. And these are new tools that anyone can use either for free or at a pretty low cost. And so I saw this as a tool for people to expand their horizons, their understanding, and their reach in the world, which of course is great. But then, of course, after a while, I acknowledge the reality that people still don't have access or control over their data. And that is a problem. And a lot of the data that is being mined and utilized is not necessarily properly tagged or utilized in a way that allows the model to be as accurate and human-centric as possible.
Very interesting. You recently submitted your dissertation and you talked about translation bridge in your dissertation. What is it? Maybe you can share with our listeners, and how does it help turn big ideas into real systems?
Yeah, for sure. So the FEP, which is Free Energy Principle, CI, Collective Intelligence Translation Bridge, actually took concepts from both of these areas of the science and created a structured coding system based on the principles, which were then applied and analyzed from narratives. So another thing that I saw with data mining and obtaining data from people was you're not always getting a contextualized understanding. You're just getting, for example, large language models, yet again, these transformers are just based on like, what is the next word? So it's not always based on the contextualized information. So we analyze people's narratives along with other contextualized information. So based on this a question, which was about like, what is a discrepancy of your experience when going into the employment ecosystem? And they would tell a tale, a story about what their experience was. And based on that, and analyzing all of our responders, we took these concepts from these sciences and translated them. So for example, I created 20 detailed codes about higher level experiences, i.e. the individual level. And then secondarily, it was the systems level of what experience at a systems level was happening. And the third level in which we were analyzing is the interactive dynamics, which is something that they don't actually analyze, I think, at all. So how do individuals adapt when there's systematic dysfunction, and do these institutions resist change when there are failures? So this is analysis with this translation bridge, searching for these concepts at 3 different levels. So for example, just for at the systems level code, for example, there's 5. There's mismatch, isolation, void, compensation, and inequality. And so these are concepts that come up often with systems analysis or systems failure.
And I assume this, like inequality, does it go to bias and fairness?
Yes. So whenever an individual or someone who was in the system who described an experience that had to do with unfairness or not access, etc., this was coded under inequality.
That is very interesting. And then that brings us to the next topic, which is responsible AI. So how do you make sure that AI systems are actually fair, responsible, and include everyone?
Yes, this is a huge problem, as we all know. And frankly, in the past few years, people were very excited about the changes and the legislation that was moving forward in, for example, the UK, the EU. But I think it's been a little bit put on pause, especially thanks to the administration in America. No matter what your political beliefs are, I think these are areas that they're no longer really focusing on. And so I think what is best is always oversight. You really need to sunlight the situation. You need to be these individuals, consumers, constituents, agents. There's all different names, but these are people, and these individuals who are in the system. So if people in the system do not have access to the data that they are creating, and they don't know where it's going, and is not in layman terms, and they don't have a bird's eye view of the system itself, then you don't have control. And then you can't also be the first and last check and balance, which should be the populace, which should be the user. And again, if it cannot be communicated in a way that they understand, then they shouldn't be signing anything. Then you're just taking advantage. So I think those who are deploying tech or AI in which people are being taken advantage of, or in which you don't have access to your own data, which is everyone at this point, I think they're missing the point that this benefits them as well. Having information and feedback loops from your consumers, constituents, and users is imperative to make certain that your products, your algorithms, your campaigns are accurately representing these people so that they will utilize them. This is beneficial for everyone. So I think, and this is something that I'm also writing about, and this is something I'm very passionate about, is symbiotic ecosystems. So I think in AI regulation, it really needs to be about this symbiosis that you see in nature. The best system in the world is one that we came forth from, which is nature. And yet our systems don't mimic that, which I find interesting. And AI is an extension of ourselves, which in itself is kind of like the next step of, I would say, nature. And so I think we should take a long, hard look at the world around us to try to see that we're giving birth to something that can be or is more powerful than us, and what should we do based on what we see in the natural world.
I totally agree. You mentioned collective intelligence in your dissertation. What are some ways people and AI can think and solve problems together?
I think collective intelligence focuses all on making certain that everyone in the system is involved, not just involved, that their information is gathered equally and that they have a say, and that the collective is given the opportunity to be heard, but also to be taught. It's about intelligence. It's a ongoing cyclical aspect of learning and teaching and hearing and all of this. And so I think what's imperative whether we use different types of modeling techniques, that's not transformers, that isn't large language models, whatever it is that we're using under the hood of what we call AI, artificial intelligence, that it's imperative that you have everyone involved on this planet, because it is made for people, by people. And if you only have a segment, then this will harm those groups, and then in general harm the system, because we are all connected. This is the only planet we have, and it's imperative to be able to have differing perspectives. Again, it's an intelligent move, no matter how you look at it, because you're obtaining as much insights and novel ideas as you can, and this will benefit the algorithms as well.
So you think, yeah, we as system creators can do some arrangement to reduce the uncertainty and this skepticism toward AI?
Yeah, I think there needs to be more oversight, not just at the not just at the level of like different tech companies or regulators. I think even at the public level, like things should be made and communicated in a layman's term, in a very straightforward way that people can understand, and then also be given the opportunity to have more say on these topics. I think it's great that you have all of these people and groups all over the world that are looking at legislation or looking at papers or writing white papers. But at the end of the day, it starts to become, yet again, its own industry where you're looking for funding, you're looking for the ability to stay afloat, to stay relevant, and then you lose the main objective. So I think the only way to make certain that the needs of the people are always met is to make the populace be AI literate and to be data literate. And, at different levels, a 6-year-old can understand some of these concepts, if all of these concepts, but you have to communicate them in a way in which they can get the fundamentals. And I think it's imperative that these 6-year-olds and teenagers and all these other like Gen Alpha, et cetera, are taught these things and these aspects in school at a very young age so that they become very literate and this becomes a part of their world instead of just allowing a select few in a select country, namely America or the Western world, to be deploying these tools, these technologies that affect the entire world. I mean, it's a kind of a crazy concept if you break it down like that.
I agree. But being an American and watching the AI Act that is come in the EU from outside, what is your perception of this? Because these are a lot of discussion in EU, and like both public and private sector are focusing to make AI systems that are responsible. On the other side, I don't hear so much of that from the US side. So how do you see these challenges in US?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to get into politics, but I will say that there is a war going on internally in America for a while now between profit and life, like of your of the country. Is profit more important than the individual, than rights? And I have my thoughts, which is, of course, I think you won't have profit without people. So if you kill off the person, if you destroy the systems that created for the people, then you don't have profit. So I think it's obvious, again, no matter what your ideological beliefs are, one comes before the other and continues the other. So I think it's interesting what's going on with the administration, with the new tech, with the new laws, and specifically with OpenAI. But I think that they do not have the right regulations in place, and they don't have all of the different types of stakeholders that should be included. And they tend to not listen and look around and look at like white papers or how other countries are going about working with their different types of technology and their policies. And this makes it an echo chamber.
Absolutely. Well, one of the reasons that I started this podcast series was that I have started a project in US together with my Harvard colleagues, and we are trying to use AI to reduce the school shooting in US. And this has been in my heart. When I learned about AI, I said I have to do something positive. So if you are given unlimited resources in the world and you don't have to be worried about the food, work, family, anything, what AI project will you pursue?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for working on that, because it is absolutely terrible and frankly disgusting that we live in a world, and specifically that Americans live in a world, where it is almost normalized that they're so numbed to the fact that children are shooting each other at an insane, alarming, catastrophic rate. And so I really, anyone who's going to put forth energy, time, money to get rid of this issue and to heal whatever is causing all of this, I think is imperative, and I really thank you for that. For me, and this aligns, I think, with your passion, and I think a lot of fundamental issues in society is collective intelligence tech or decision tech. I think when I talk to people about collective intelligence technology, they're like, what's that? And like, it doesn't really exist, which is unfortunate. And it's all about collecting the narratives and the understandings consistently from individuals in society. I think we have all of these applications and they take so much information about us. Like, what's your favorite outfit? What's your favorite song? What's your favorite makeup brand? And it's taking all this information, but it's not being utilized to understand our true fundamental needs. Consumerism is an aspect of an individual, but that's not the fundamental layer, and that probably isn't the most important thing. So I think having and creating applications that allow people to provide data anonymously, I think anonymously is very important, at a consistent rate, or even just like dropping, like almost having an online journal that is anonymously tied to your representative's office, for example, and being able to know that it's going to these people, and then also more importantly, being able to see the statistics behind it. So being able to see an aggregated understanding of your neighbors, of anonymously, of your fellow constituents. Like 30% of people are worried about this one street. 50% of people are cold during this month because, you know, the gas didn't work so fast. Like, this is, not only is this important for the individual, but this is powerful for the collective. And I think this is the best way to also have, to really have oversight, to be able to harness data from the people by themselves to say, listen, my representative, listen, government, federal government, I know that we have this data and you have to act on it. And so this is very powerful. It's also a way to have a symbiotic nation. Again, much like nature, there's constant rotation of information from all the plants, the animals, the soil, and it can act and react quickly based on this. So I think this is something that I think is very important and a fundamental aspect, which everything else can then spring from. And maybe when you aggregate more data that is more representative, that AI and these models will be more representative, which in itself is more about human-centric AI.
Very interesting. So I hope that you get enough resources and funding for that, and you pursue what is your heart, because it's necessary, the way I hear it. Well, last but not the least, what does Beyond the Tech mean to you?
It's really important to recognize that anyone can be innovative. And I think everyone is innovative in their own subjective way. And that technology allows us to harness our individual expertise, perspectives, wants, whims, and that going beyond tech just for, again, consumption and just for innovation of the select few is not going beyond the tech, which technology is an extension of all of us. It is a power that we all have, and it should be treated as such in the world. And so I think we really need to look beyond this as something to consume or make money from, and as an extension of every human being, and as an enumerated right as well. So I think this should be something that should be legally mandated and protected for all.
Great. Thank you for sharing your insight, Allegra. This was really a pleasure conversation with you. I hope that our audience also liked it, because I really did. And I thank you and wish you all the best in your future career. Thanks.
Thank you. And Neda, thank you so much for really putting yourself out there and going and talking to all these different types of people from all these different walks of life. I think it's really important and impactful what you're doing. And Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thanks.